It was a cold winter evening in New York. The streets were busy, filled with people rushing home, but James walked slowly, his heart heavy. He was a single father trying his best to take care of his little daughter, Emily. His job at the warehouse barely paid enough for rent, and after paying the bills, he was left with only a few dollars. That night, he stopped in front of a grocery store, holding a small list Emily had written: bread, milk, and her favorite cookies. James counted his money again and realized he didn't have enough. His hands trembled as he stood there, feeling ashamed and helpless. Just then, a stranger walked by and noticed him. The man was tall, well-dressed, and carried a calm smile on his face. He approached James and asked gently, "Are you all right, sir?" James quickly nodded, trying to hide his struggles, but the stranger could see the pain in his eyes. He glanced at the list in James's hand and without saying much, he walked into the store. Moments later, he returned with a bag full of groceries. James was stunned. He tried to refuse, but the stranger placed the bag in his hands and said, "Don't worry, it's taken care of." Tears welled in James's eyes. He asked softly, "Why would you do this for me?" The stranger smiled and replied, "Because someone once did the same for me." With that, he patted James on the shoulder and walked away into the busy street, disappearing into the crowd. James stood frozen, clutching the bag. That night, for the first time in months, he felt a spark of hope. A simple act of kindness had touched his heart, and unknowingly, it had already started to change his life forever. That night, James could not sleep. He kept staring at the bag of groceries the stranger had given him. Each item felt like a gift from heaven. For the first time in a long while, James and Emily ate dinner without worry. Emily laughed as she enjoyed her favorite cookies, and James quietly wiped away his tears. He realized it wasn't just food that man had given him, it was hope. The stranger's words echoed in his mind, "Because someone once did the same for me." James wondered what kind of story lay behind those words. Was the stranger once poor like him? Did someone's kindness save him too? That thought gave James a new strength. He promised himself that one day, he would also help someone the same way. A few days later, James saw his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, struggling to carry heavy grocery bags up the stairs. Normally, he would have ignored it, lost in his own worries, but this time something pushed him forward. He quickly rushed to her side, lifted the bags, and walked her to her door. Mrs. Wilson looked at him with tired but grateful eyes and said, "Thank you, young man. I don't know how I would have managed without you." In that small moment, James felt something shift inside him. The weight of his own problems seemed lighter. The kindness he had received from a stranger was now flowing through him to others. That evening, as he tucked Emily into bed, she asked, "Daddy, why were you helping Mrs. Wilson today?" James kissed her forehead and whispered, "Because kindness should never stop with just one person." He didn't know it yet, but that small choice to help his neighbor was the beginning of a chain reaction, one that would change many lives, including his own. A week later, James's life took another difficult turn. When he arrived at the warehouse where he worked, his manager called him into the office. With a heavy sigh, the manager explained that the company was downsizing, and James's position was no longer needed. James felt his stomach drop. He had rent due, bills piling up, and a daughter depending on him. As he walked out of the building, holding his final paycheck, he felt the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. He decided to visit the local employment office, hoping to find another job quickly. Sitting in the crowded waiting area, James buried his face in his hands, silently praying for guidance. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, I know you." James looked up in shock. It was the same stranger, the man who had bought him groceries. This time, he was wearing a volunteer badge. The stranger, whose name was Daniel, sat down beside him. "Looking for work?" Daniel asked warmly. James nodded, embarrassed to admit his struggles again. Daniel gently took James's resume, read it carefully, and said, "You have strong skills. You just need a chance." He told James about an opening at a local logistics company and even helped him rewrite his resume on the spot. Within a week, James received an interview call. Nervous but hopeful, he went in, and to his amazement, he was hired. The job offered better pay, stable hours, and even health insurance. For James, it felt like life had given him a second chance. That evening, as he hugged Emily tightly, he whispered, "We're going to be okay, sweetheart." James realized then that the stranger's kindness was not just a one-time gift. It had become a bridge, leading him from despair to hope, from struggle to opportunity. Months passed, and life slowly began to change for James and his daughter Emily. With his new job, he was finally able to pay bills on time, buy healthier food, and even save a little each month. After years of struggling, James managed to rent a small but cozy apartment in a safer neighborhood. For the first time, Emily had her own little room, painted in soft colors, decorated with her drawings, and filled with books and toys she once only dreamed of. One evening, as they sat together at the dinner table, Emily looked around their home and asked innocently, "Daddy, who helped us when we had nothing?" James paused for a moment, remembering that cold night outside the grocery store. He smiled softly and said, "It was a kind stranger, sweetheart. Someone who didn't know us but chose to help anyway." Emily's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Why would he do that?" she asked. James gently replied, "Because kindness is like magic, it doesn't need a reason. It just makes the world better." Emily thought for a moment and then whispered, "When I grow up, I'll help people too." Those simple words touched James deeply. He realized the kindness of one stranger had not only changed his life, but was shaping the heart of his daughter as well. Later that night, James stood by Emily's bed, watching her sleep peacefully. He felt overwhelming gratitude, not only for the food, the job, and the home, but for the gift of hope and compassion that had been planted in their lives. James knew he could never repay the stranger fully, but he promised himself one thing: he would carry that kindness forward. His heart was no longer heavy, it was full of purpose. Years passed, and James's life had transformed completely. His hard work at the logistics company earned him respect, promotions, and financial stability. Emily grew into a bright young girl who carried her father's values of kindness and compassion in her heart. Together, they often volunteered at local shelters, serving food and helping families who were struggling, because James never forgot the stranger who once helped him when he had nothing. One chilly evening, James was walking home from work along the same street where his life had once taken a turn. As he passed a small convenience store, he noticed a young man sitting outside. His clothes were worn, and his hands trembled as he held a small piece of paper, a grocery list. The sight hit James like a memory from the past. He saw himself in that young man, lost and hopeless. Without hesitation, James walked into the store, bought a bag full of groceries, and handed it to him. The young man looked shocked. "Why would you do this for me?" he asked, his voice breaking. James smiled warmly, his eyes glistening with emotion, and replied, "Because someone once did the same for me." In that moment, James felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The kindness that had once saved him had now come full circle. He wasn't just repaying a debt, he was continuing a legacy. That night, as he returned home, Emily noticed the smile on her father's face. When he told her what had happened, she hugged him tightly and whispered, "Daddy, kindness never ends, does it?" James looked into her eyes and said, "No, sweetheart. True kindness lives forever, passing from one heart to another." And with that, the story of one stranger's kindness became a legacy that would continue to change lives for generations to come.